It began on an unassuming morning in Tennessee, where dew still clung to the grass and the promise of another ordinary day hung in the air. Derek Bieri, the unflappable force behind Vice Grip Garage, had built a life that many only dream of. Over 3 million subscribers, more than 500 million views, and an empire born from rusted metal and genuine grit. He lived with his wife Jessica and their 3 children on a sprawling farm, every corner of which echoed with laughter and the steady thrum of engines coming back to life. To the outside world, Derek had it all: respect, family, success, and the unshakable belief that any problem could be solved with a wrench and a little elbow grease. But beneath that confident exterior lay a truth even he hadn't fully faced until that fateful moment. In 2023, everything changed with a single misstep. It wasn't a financial collapse, nor was it a scandal. It was far more primal. One careless moment under a classic '72 Plymouth Fury nearly ended in tragedy. Imagine a 4,000-pound machine suspended just inches above the ground, the smell of leaking oil mixing with the sharp tang of fear, and a slip so small that 4,000 pounds of steel came crashing down like an avalanche, pinning Derek's arm and reminding him that even the toughest steel bends under the right pressure. His son Bentley, not yet 13, was there, wide-eyed and frozen, as Jessica's scream pierced the stillness. In a heartbeat, the unbreakable mechanic found himself caught, vulnerable, his confidence shattered by the weight of his own ambition. That moment was a mirror reflecting every shortcut he'd ever taken, every deadline he'd chased, every time he'd whispered "send it," without a second thought. It forced him to confront the paradox he'd built his brand on: raw authenticity paired with relentless speed. For years, viewers flocked to his channel to watch him tackle impossible restorations with nothing but grit and duct tape. They loved the close calls, the explosions of tools and sparks, the ragged laughter patched into every scene. But the day his daughter's tears met his, he realized the thrill of living life on the edge wasn't worth the price of a family's heartbreak. Rewind a few decades, and you'd find a boy growing up in Minot, North Dakota, where snowfall could last for months, and a broken tractor meant the difference between food on the table and an empty dinner plate. That farmhouse was where Derek learned that scarcity breeds ingenuity. When his father's stubborn old John Deere refused to start, young Derek was already in the barn, sleeves rolled up, teaching himself how to listen to an engine like you'd listen to a friend in pain. By age 7, he'd rebuilt a rusted wagon into a makeshift go-kart. By 13, he'd resurrected a war-worn military Ford without manuals, relying on scraps and sheer will. Those early lessons in survival and self-reliance forged the heart of Vice Grip Garage, the idea that if you cannot buy a solution, you can build one. Yet survival has its own brand of cruelty. At 17, a welding mistake fused Derek's finger to molten metal. The agony taught him respect for both the steel he loved and the fragile vessel that carried him through life. He spent nights in the hospital learning safety protocols with the same intensity he once reserved for carburetor rebuilds. That blend of caution honed through pain and fearless ambition became his secret sauce. He joined the Army, not for glory but for the chance to sharpen his skills under high stakes. Whether diagnosing faulty wiring under fire near Baghdad or cobbling together a makeshift relay to save his patrol, Derek learned that lives depended on precision as much as perseverance. Returning home, he poured every lesson back into metal, turning scrapyard Chevy Camaros into machine shop masterpieces. He climbed corporate ladders, raked in 7-figure deals, only to find the boardroom stifling. So he sought escape in his garage late at night, iPhone on a tripod, sweat dripping off his brow, and Vice Grip Garage was born. No script, no lighting rigs, just raw footage of a man and his passion. That honesty struck a chord. When Derek channeled the grit of his childhood and the urgency of wartime fixes, people leaned in. They weren't watching for perfection. They were watching for permission to tackle the impossible themselves. But permission comes with responsibility. For years, viewers cheered as Derek pushed builds to their limits, leaning on jacks and makeshift stands, never seeing the moment when those stands threatened to fail. They saw the horsepower numbers climb and the subscriber count soar, but they didn't see the nights Jessica sat beside a jack stand, checking its bolts one by one in trembling candlelight, praying for safety. Then came the near-fatal crush under that fury, and everything shifted. He rebuilt that car again, yes, but with double the supports, reinforced frame rails, and a manifesto that safety isn't optional. It's essential. What could have been the story of an engineer marked by tragedy became a turning point. A reminder that legacies are built on lives saved, not just engines revived. Today, Derek stands at another crossroads. The man who once believed that sending it was the ultimate triumph now preaches calculated risk. His children learn beside him, not as props, but as apprentices in a craft that demands respect. His videos drop less frequently, but each one is a masterclass, longer to produce, but richer in insight and cautionary tales. Viewers still tune in for the roar of metal and the thunder of horsepower, but now they stay for the quiet moments. The clink of a torque wrench finding just the right tension, the soft exchange of gratitude as father and son share a grin across an engine bay. In confronting his own vulnerability, Derek Bieri didn't lose his edge, he perfected it. His tragedy was a reckoning, one that no amount of ad revenue or viral views could ever replace. And through that reckoning, he discovered that true grit isn't measured by how hard you can send it, but by how carefully you come back home. The world watched as Derek's channel flickered with that brutal moment. For 1,000 pounds of steel nearly crushing an unguarded arm, a raw reminder that machines, no matter how familiar, can bite back. Comments erupted from DIY mechanics confessing their close calls, from kids who scolded their parents for skipping safety checks, from partners who begged beloved tinkerers to slow down. Overnight, Vice Grip Garage transformed from a showcase of near-impossible restorations to a rallying cry for caution. Derek himself scrolled through messages in the dead of night, stunned by fan testimonials. An extra jack stand here, an upgraded certified lift there, little changes saving lives in cluttered home workshops around the globe. He realized that his mistake had ignited a movement, one where adrenaline and responsibility could coexist, where grit didn't mean risk without reason. Now, Derek's uploads came slower, each one a meticulous blueprint in risk management. Gone were the off-the-cuff builds with unsteady cameras and wobbly stands. In their place, he unveiled a reimagined routine. Pre-restoration safety walkthroughs, first-look gear inspections, multi-point jack stand placements, video overlays highlighting torque specifications, gear ratings, and red flag warnings. Viewers noticed the difference immediately, a shift from reckless momentum to deliberate progression, like watching a seasoned pilot teach novices to navigate turbulence. His voiceover, once a gravelly rush, now carried calm authority seasoned by vulnerability. At the end of every episode, he tightened down the final bolt, paused, and said, "This isn't about glory, it's about coming home." One standout episode chronicled his rebuilding of that same 72 Fury that nearly claimed him. He started with a commercial-grade lift, institutional-grade jack stands, and industrial safety straps rated for decades of weight. Every weld was documented in real time, annotated with carbon content data and recommended heat settings. He even installed an overhead rail hoist, something he had once sneered at for being too clean, now preaching its necessity. The finished reveal cut through the familiar roar of engines to reveal a fortified metal sanctuary, a workbench built on respect rather than haste. That episode became his highest-rated tutorial yet worldwide. After that video aired, forums lit up with stories of viewers who had retrofitted spare garages based on his blueprint. A college student in Ohio posted before and after photos of his dorm rig turned into a mini backshop. A miner in West Virginia rebuilt an entire drift's worth of cart motors with renewed diligence. Even professional shops weighed in, thanking Derek for bridging the gap between blue-collar toughness and modern safety standards. That momentum carried into live streams, where fans tuned in every Tuesday night, not just for the next build, but for the Q&A sessions where he answered tool-related and mental health questions alike. The chat room overflowed with emojis, virtual high-fives, and a collective sense that they were part of something bigger. Vice Grip Garage's identity shifted overnight. It stayed a sanctuary for the raw and the real, but with a new emblem, a safety diamond stamped on wrenches as his personal seal of approval. Sponsorship deals changed, too. No longer just performance parts, but certified protective gear, impact-resistant gloves, calibrated torque tools. It was a stark contrast from the days when he'd brag about finding a bolt in the mulch and making it work. While some purists grumbled that the channel had sold out its rough edges, most applauded the evolution. Derek's creed, once send it, became secure it, send it, live it, and the numbers spoke for themselves. Engagement rose, watch time climbed, and retention soared. Behind the scenes, Derek quietly launched the Minot Mechanical Scholarship, a fund dedicated to supporting future technicians from his hometown. He pledged a portion of every merchandise sale, turning each t-shirt, sticker, and Pray For Me diff cover into a scholarship check. He also partnered with local schools to outfit vocational labs with modern safety equipment, ensuring that the next generation wouldn't have to learn hard lessons in hospital beds. When he announced these initiatives, fans responded with a wave of donations and mentorship volunteers. It wasn't about a hero complex. It was about community uplift. The mechanic who once fixed tractors to feed his family was now fixing futures. Despite the applause, Derek wrestled with doubt. He feared losing the unfiltered grit that had drawn millions in the first place. Could a guardrail and a slow walkthrough coexist with explosion demos and full-throttle test runs? Then, during a live build, a viewer typed, "Thank you for saving my friend's life." And Derek's answer came unprompted. He switched off the mic, knelt by the workbench, and pinned a new motto on a scrap of cardboard: "Reckless honesty is brave. Safe courage is heroic." From that point, every build, every breakdown, every wrench throw carried that ethos. And the community, learning alongside him, embraced a new kind of bravery. That motto, "Reckless honesty is brave. Safe courage is heroic," became the gold standard for every new project. Derek approached his next build, a rusted barn-find Chevy Chevelle, with the same feral energy fans expected, but tempered now by additional safeguards. He spent days researching load ratings, ergonomic angles for wrenching, and structural reinforcements to protect body and machine. The triple-digit horsepower target remained thrilling, but the path to get there now featured a digital display of safety metrics between each cut and weld. In a move that surprised many, Derek invited two longtime viewers into his workshop. One was a young mechanic from Michigan struggling after a serious hand injury. The other was a single mother from Texas whose husband had been hospitalized following a garage accident. Both arrived carrying their own scars and hopes. Cameras rolled as Derek guided them through calibrating torque wrenches and selecting the right grade of steel. Their gratitude mingled with the hum of drills, and the session became a live demonstration of his core message: nobody succeeds alone, and nobody should pay the ultimate price for passion without preparation. Meanwhile, Jessica organized the children's roles as junior safety engineers. Bailey, age 9, applied his first coat of rust inhibitor under Derek's supervision. Bradley, age 7, tested safety goggles for fit. Even little Addison learned to label hazard zones on a whiteboard, charting danger areas in bright red. This family choreography carried emotional weight. Viewers saw father and mother trading smiles over a burrito break, then dropping back into the grime and grease. That duality, gentle family warmth alongside mechanical intensity, became the emotional engine of the episode, shifting the audience's pulse between comfort and suspense. The result was a dramatic tension that held views for the full runtime. In the climax, Derek challenged himself and his guests to reroute the fuel lines on the Chevelle's new 427 block using a 3-point safety lock system. The old build would have demanded a one-man dash and prayer. His new protocol required a step-by-step checklist, live cross-checks on camera, and real-time data from a torque monitoring app. When the final bolt clicked into place, Derek closed his eyes, audibly exhaled, and looked down at the family and fans gathered around. The roar of the starter motor became a collective victory chant. It wasn't just horsepower unleashed, it was courage reclaimed in its safest form. That video cracked 1 million views in 24 hours, not because it offered a record-breaking quarter mile, but because it offered a record-breaking sense of shared empowerment. Fans posted photos of their own builds featuring custom safety plates or double-lift stands, and a hashtag #SafeCourage trended across social networks. Mechanic shops began hosting Safety Week workshops, branding them after Vice Grip Garage, and sharing instructional clips from Derek's channel. The world he had built for himself expanded into living rooms, driveways, and industrial bays around the globe. Off camera, Derek wrestled with renewed pressure. Sponsorships continued to flow in, from major tool manufacturers to protective gear empires, but the stakes felt higher. Every branded post promised a safer tomorrow, and he worried that any misstep could shatter the ethos he had painstakingly crafted. Yet his wife's steady confidence balanced him. "Trust the formula," she reminded him one morning over coffee. "You built it with care. Let them add to it." With that, Derek greenlit a series of shorter tutorials, each focusing on a single safety upgrade: hazard lighting, wool chalk placement, chemical handling protocols. He named the series "One Thing, One Life," underscoring that sometimes a small change protects something priceless. In parallel, the Minot Mechanical Scholarship was delivering its first checks to aspiring students. Videos chronicled recipients crossing state lines to tour Derek's Tennessee farm, wide-eyed as engine bays gleamed under bright shop lights. They met the family, signed their acceptance letters on wrenches engraved with the Vice Grip Garage logo, and left with tool kits and a mandate: protect yourself, protect your people. These stories complemented the mechanical content, weaving cultural relevance into every rivet and ribbon cut. The third arc unfolded in a live build for charity. Derek announced a 48-hour challenge: fully restore a vintage Ford Falcon to world-class cruise condition, with all proceeds supporting medical bills of affected mechanics. The twist was that he would hold back half of his usual tools, forcing improvisation under supervision of multiple U.S. safety inspectors. Fans flooded the notification bell, knowing this event combined his hallmark unpredictability with the reassurance of official oversight. The countdown clock ticked, and when cameras cut live, thousands tuned in. Every click of the impact gun felt amplified. Every intermittent alarm communicated the gravity of the task. It worked, the sound of the countdown bell. Derek slammed the workshop doors shut behind him, and the roar of eager viewers pulsing through his live feed was instantaneous. He'd announced a 48-hour charity restoration challenge. A battered Ford Falcon dragged from a dusty barn promised to be reborn under official safety oversight, with half the usual tools locked away. The proceeds would cover medical bills for mechanics injured on the job. Fans cheered. His heart pounded. This was the crucible he'd been forging toward ever since that nearly fatal crush. The stakes felt higher than ever, but the ethos driving him was simple: amplify the thrill of creation while cementing the imperative of protection. The workshop lights flared on, illuminating every speck of sawdust and oil stain. Inspectors from a recognized safety board stood at the perimeter, clipboards in hand, their presence a new layer of pressure. Derek took a deep breath, adjusting gloves that bore his Safe Courage emblem. He unlocked only essential wrenches, leaving impact guns and pneumatic hammers sealed in a corner. His hands hovered over the engine, remembering the weight of shortcuts past. Then he looked into the camera, winked, and said, "We build, we learn, we live." Immediately, he placed the first bolt under dual-rated jack stands, the click echoing through thousands of headsets. Hour by hour, the challenge unfolded like a choreography of calculated risk. When he stripped the Falcon's rusted frame, sparks flew from his grinder only after he'd donned face shields and placed heat-resistant curtains around the sparks. Every cut was preluded by a whispered checklist: inspect gloves, clear flammable materials, confirm ventilation. Viewers inundated the chat with emojis and "let's go" messages, but Derek's focus was unwavering: speed tempered by procedure. Midway through the first day, a critical clamp jumper snapped under torque. The crowd gasped. Derek paused, exchanged a glance with an inspector, then calmly retrieved a certified replacement from the sealed corner. He traced each tightening motion on camera, narrating the torque specs and explaining why this clamp's engineering mattered. The tension bubbled into applause, validating a new kind of suspense, one where safety protocols became the hero. As night fell, the smallest setbacks carried outsized weight. The power tool battery overheated, forcing Derek to haul out a manual ratchet set. He toggled headlamp brightness to read etched gear ratios, joking that restoring a Falcon by hand was vintage muscle in the purest sense. The inspectors nodded in approval as he balanced torque with sweat and light glove grease. Cameras panned to his crew. Two viewers he'd invited: a young mechanic recovering from a hand surgery and a single mother whose spouse had nearly lost a limb. Their determination mirrored Derek's own early days in North Dakota, and together they measured a rebuilt axle support crossbar, then exchanged triumphant high fives. The moment made the audience swell with pride, proof that informed teamwork could conquer both metal and fear. By dawn on day 2, the Falcon's engine bay gleamed under fluorescent lights redesigned for safety. Derek and his makeshift crew tackled the final wiring harness with deliberate care, using torque-limiting electronic wrenches and color-coded cable ties. He guided the young mechanic's hands, steadying them as they latched connectors into place, and reminded everyone, a machine is only as strong as its weakest link. Then came the crescendo, flipping on the ignition. Cameras caught every vibration as the engine roared to life, clean, controlled, and free of anxious smoke puffs. The chat exploded with celebration. Donations streamed in alongside messages from families thanking Derek for teaching them that courage without caution could be deadly, but courage with care could light the world. With the Falcon's chassis cured and engine symphony ringing, Derek rolled it out into the morning sun, each tire track a testament to transformation. He climbed into the driver's seat, glanced into the camera, and spoke directly to his audience. This isn't the fastest pass or the loudest roar. It's a promise we keep, to ourselves and to everyone who watches. You matter more than any build. Then he stepped out and opened a tablet, revealing a donation total that surpassed the initial goal by 30%. Families on the receiving end of medical bills would find relief, and mechanics nationwide would encounter safer workshops because of one live challenge. Later, in a quieter moment, Derek sat among his family on the workshop bench, the Falcon idling softly outside. Jessica passed him a bottle of water as the kids played with spark-proof gloves. He reflected on the journey from that fateful day when steel almost broke him, to this milestone of collective empowerment. No clickbait title, no adrenaline-soaked stunt, just a community uniting under a banner of informed bravery. He realized that fear used wisely sharpened focus, and that vulnerability shared could become the bedrock of trust. Before signing off, he unveiled the next chapter, a purpose-built twin-turbo Falcon project, designed not only to chase speed records, but to fund scholarships for young mechanics from Minot, North Dakota, the place that first taught him to fix what he couldn't afford to replace. Every wrench used, every bolt torqued, would carry inscriptions reminding him, and his viewers, that the greatest legacy a builder can leave is ensuring others have the skill and safeguards to carry the torch forward. As cameras faded to black, his final words lingered, build boldly, but build wisely. We're just getting started. In the cool twilight after the Falcon challenge, Derek slipped into his home office, where a simple wooden desk bore stacks of notebooks and scraps of cardboard brimming with project notes. He opened a freshly printed chapter from his upcoming memoir, the one that traced how an unexpected gaggle of viewers became a lifeline after that near-fatal garage accident. His handwriting sprawled across margins with raw reflections on fear, resilience, and the mechanics of trust. He envisioned readers turning pages in quiet garages and boisterous workshops alike, finding permission to reframe their own miscalculations as lessons rather than failures. The story wasn't just about steel and torque specs anymore. It was a meditation on human vulnerability, on how community can raise the safest platforms for innovation each time healed further. While his memoir took shape, Derek also sketched designs for the twin-turbo Falcon, a project destined to marry brute force with uncompromising safety. In his mind, he pictured custom reinforcements at every juncture, roll cages with integrated energy-absorbing materials, firewalls lined with heat-dissipating panels, and suspension arms forged to flex under extreme loads without fracturing. He imagined viewers pausing their screens to jot down recommended part numbers and installation tips, not for the thrill of speed, but to ground their builds in dependable engineering. Each concept would appear as annotated diagrams in the book's instructionals, blending storytelling with technical schematics. His goal was to weave narrative threads and mechanical precision until readers felt both inspired and empowered to prioritize structural integrity alongside creative ambition, bold, balanced, safe, power, and purpose. With publication dates approaching, Derek juggled promotional interviews alongside wrenching nights in the barn. He joined podcasts where hosts peppered him with questions about adrenaline-infused storytelling and the calculus of risk. He explained why sharing his darkest accident wasn't a clickbait tactic, but a responsibility to reshape a culture that glamorized danger. On social media, he dropped teasers, close-up shots of hydraulic press testing and cross-section metal beams, accompanied by captions like, "What if every bend taught us more than every break?" Fellow mechanics tagged colleagues, sparking debates about whether raw grit or regulated procedure should dominate the next era of DIY culture. For Derek, the tension between those worlds fueled his drive, demonstrating that true mastery arises when unfiltered passion meets unyielding respect for the tools at hand exactly. In the promotional push, Derek unveiled a limited edition run of vintage-style posters depicting the moment the Fury nearly crushed his arm, remastered with illustrated safety gear superimposed on it. Proceeds fueled his scholarship fund for rural workshops. He penned a foreword about that near-death instant, recounting how it stripped away illusions of invincibility and replaced them with an obligation to guard every heartbeat that made his work possible. As orders flooded in from mechanics, students, and families alike, he realized how fear, when shared, became a catalyst for collective diligence. Even longtime skeptics messaged him, admitting they had scrubbed a build when they reread his account late at night. The narrative had transcended demonstration. It had become a movement, a shared vow that no wrench would ever steal another sunrise. As the book launch neared, Derek hosted a live Q&A revealing a sneak peek at the chapter on mental resilience. He confessed that after publishing the first draft, he experienced waves of anxiety, worrying that sharing vulnerability would undercut his image. Instead, viewers flooded the chat with stories of their own doubts and near misses, urging him to preserve every unvarnished detail. That exchange became its own microcosm of his journey, vulnerability forging stronger bonds than bravado ever could. His platform evolved beyond pure mechanics into psychological armor for everyday builders. Orders of the memoir soared, and Vice Grip Garage's community found a new identity, a brotherhood and sisterhood bound by shared imperfection and collective dedication to forge safer legacies. In the weeks afterwards, every build became a conversation around responsibility, innovation. Months later, Derek's Garage Farm hosted a summit for top content creators and safety experts. Cameras documented heated panels debating the merits of pure passion versus regulated protocols, but Derek's closing keynote transcended both extremes. He walked barefoot across a stage littered with metal shards, symbolizing mistakes that could have ended his life, and treated each shard as a lesson carved into memory. He urged fellow creators to script their stunts with safety margins, to embrace transparency about their failures as rigorously as their successes. The audience rose in cheers, not for the roar of an engine, but for the roar of collective conscience. They left armed with checklists and an unwavering commitment to guard the next line of dreamers who would follow their footsteps into wrench bays around the world boldly. In the months since that pivotal summit on the farm, Vice Grip Garage's workshop floor has carried a different energy. Tools once treated as instruments of pure performance are now prized for their reliability, factory-certified torque ranges, and impact ratings. Apprentices who once watched Derek chase quarter-mile passes now shadow his every calibrating click and torque wrench snap, learning that every fastening choice has a consequence. The walls of the bay display new mementos, embroidered patches from scholarship recipients, framed safety checklists hand-signed by fans, and a laminated poster of his new motto, "Built bold, built wise, built to last." The sound of engines firing under controlled test stands now carries a note of collective pride rather than reckless bravado, and every spark is met with a nod to what it represents: progress fueled by purpose. As the twin-turbo Falcon project nears its first groundbreaking teardown phase, Derek moves deliberately through every step, scanning chassis stress maps, cross-referencing material fatigue data, and consulting a rotation of engineers broadcast live for transparency. The build spans a glass-wall conference room built for community education, where aspiring mechanics gather to watch heater shields being welded in humidity-controlled conditions, and safety monitors patrol alongside corporate sponsors of certified helmet manufacturers. Jessica curates viewer-submitted safety stories, which play on an overhead screen as the crew fits braided fuel lines and stress-tested mounts. The result is a living laboratory, a stage where creativity converges with accountability, and where each build becomes not only a milestone in horsepower, but a lesson in trust. Meanwhile, the scholarship fund has expanded beyond rural North Dakota, attracting applicants from across the globe. A teenager from Brazil documenting his oil change rituals with smartphone footage. A single father in Japan reconditioning rice tractor engines in makeshift sheds. And an indigenous machinist in Canada aiming to modernize First Nations maintenance camps. Their letters speak of isolation and lack of equipment. Through virtual classrooms hosted by Vice Grip Garage, they receive toolkits stamped with the safety diamond and exclusive access to prototype training modules. Their success stories, like the Brazilian student who retooled a motorcycle carburetor under nighttime streetlights, become features on the channel, reinforcing a narrative that boundaries are not limitations, but opportunities for innovation shaped by courage and care. Content creation itself has transformed into a collaborative blueprint. Viewers propose build challenges that Derek filters through a safety barometer. He volunteers to restore a rare EV battery pack only after assembling a shielding enclosure and fail-safe monitors to prevent thermal runaway. He tests drone-based thermal scanning to spot friction hotspots in rotating assemblies. Live Q&A sessions no longer center on horsepower bragging, but on how to integrate digital torque sensors and emergency cutoff switches into garage setups. When the channel unveiled a remote-controlled engine inhibitor that automatically kills power at unsafe RPM thresholds, subscription numbers spiked. It wasn't the mechanics show about mayhem anymore, but a global innovation hub where enthusiasts and professionals converge around a single ethos: ingenuity amplified by integrity. Recognition has followed suit. The Department of Labor invited Derek to co-author updated apprenticeship standards, embedding safety-first principles into technical curriculum. Industrial tool brands now collaborate with him to develop glove designs tested in variables that mirror punishing workshop environments. Yet Derek remains grounded in that North Dakota farmhouse spirit. Years ago, he could fix a mower in a snowstorm with scraps, and today he demonstrates how to reinforce a lift stand to withstand sub-zero temperatures and rust-induced failures. On camera, he recalls the biting wind, the strain of frozen hands, and through that memory reveals why modern safeguards are not a betrayal of heritage, but an evolution of resilience. As he chronicles these developments, Derek senses the narrative arc closing on one chapter and opening another. Soon he will reveal a series of international Safe Courage pop-up workshops, from rural Australia to urban Europe, where local builders gather under Vice Grip Garage tents to tackle joint projects, restoring vintage agricultural rigs to safe operational status, while swapping war stories about bent frames and near misses. Each location will host an exhibition of user-submitted safety innovations, gadgets born from necessity and refined through Derek's ethos. His final words in the upcoming video are certain to echo more deeply than any engine roar. We sent it, not by outrunning fear, but by steeling ourselves to meet it head-on, together, safe and unstoppable.